Hidden deep inside Forrest Fenn's memoir, The Thrill of the Chase, is an astonishing revelation. He's hidden a treasure chest full of gold and jewels and ancient relics, and invites readers to head to the mountains in search of it. It's done in the grand tradition of treasure hunts that we've read about in fictional stories. Only this one is real. You could have it in your hands today if you knew where to look. Forrest, a renowned collector, says he wants others to know the passion of exploration and discovery that has consumed him his whole life. So in this video, I want to look at the contents of the treasure chest. For several years, Forrest played around with the ingredients, trying to get the recipe just right. He took pictures to entice us, and we have the marvelous descriptions in the memoir. Let's walk through this, and let's go in the order that the author systematically laid it out. This chapter has the earmarks of something that was carefully crafted and reworked over a period of time, like the chest itself. He says it was cast bronze and has three-dimensional female figures on its four sides and on the lid. More than just female figures, the chest depicts the allegorical Siege of the Castle of Love motif. You can find it on mirrors and combs and caskets produced during the Gothic period. For centuries in Europe, there were festivals where they would reenact this storming of the castle. He says a museum friend sold it to him. Now, museum administrators and directors don't sell items from their collections. That's not how it works. I assume this individual is somehow connected to the museum world, but owns it personally. Or it's a small museum where the owner can do whatever he or she pleases. Forrest is a little vague about the seller's identity. You get the sense that Forrest fell in love with the chest, and maybe the seller picked up on that and the price went up, because Forrest says he overpaid. The seller thought he was so clever, but he didn't realize he was dealing with a man who thought he had a date with death. Who cares what the price is? He did get it appraised, and the ordering of events in this paragraph suggests that that happened after he already owned it. But the appraiser couldn't render a certain opinion. He says, probably Romanesque and about 1150. Douglas Preston's preface to Once Upon a While identified the antique scholar as Jean Thaw, described by Christie's as one of the most influential collectors, scholars, and dealers of the 20th century. The Thaws moved to Santa Fe in 1987, and Jean bought his first piece of native art at Fenn Galleries. Another thing to surface after publication of the memoir is how much Forrest paid for the chest. He paid $25,000. The last thing to mention is the evil twin from Detroit. All I know for certain is that it's obviously not the same chest, but it must be related. It's perplexing that we have a date of 1150 for Forrest's chest, but the Detroit Museum says theirs is late 1800s. It must be a late reproduction. And of course, reproductions are frequently made in art and can easily be made even centuries apart. As far as the contents, the first thing listed is the 20,000-word autobiography. It's given pride of place to remind readers that this enterprise is personal. Given Forrest's comfort level with computers, I assume it's printed in this sense, rather than handwritten. Either way, it was photocopied, so it may not be a handwritten document, although maybe the original is in the chest? I don't know.
My autobiography is in the treasure chest. I put it in a little olive jar, rolled it up, printed it Kinko's. I have to use a magnifying glass if I want to read it.
Forrest has alluded generally to gold and jewelry, but now we get specifics about treasure. Firstly, gold coins. He says mostly old American eagles and double eagles. Eagles are distinguished by what head was printed on them: turban, liberty, or Indian. Fittingly, eagles adorn the backs of these in varying positions. Double eagles were originally minted with liberty heads. Sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens designed the next mint, depicting Lady Liberty on the front and an airborne eagle on the back. They contain about just shy of 1 troy ounce, while eagles contain about half that. By the way, the difference between a troy ounce and a regular ounce is negligible. 1 troy ounce is roughly 10% more. But the difference between the two types of pounds is significant. There are 16 ounces in a pound, but only 12 troy ounces in a troy pound. When you read the word coins, your eyes move immediately to the photograph across the page, which is based on the color image on the front cover. Actually, in order to get a more horizontal look to the photograph, it was duplicated in Photoshop. But this hardly misrepresents what's in the chest. Here's a better version. I count 81 coins visible in this picture, when there are in fact 265 coins in the chest. So what coins are in the picture? We can easily identify many. Here's a St. Gaudens double eagle. Here's a Liberty Head double eagle, a Liberty Head eagle. Here's an Indian eagle, a Liberty Head half eagle. Here's an Indian half eagle. And this is a $100 half-ounce gold commemorative from Canada, probably one of the 1980s issues, but possibly 79. You wouldn't put high-value coins in a pile like this or loose in a chest. So the assumption is that these are common dates and low enough grade that they don't hold significant premium over their gold value. But their gold value is substantial. The pile appears to be mostly old US gold-type coins generally worth 10% over their value to retail buyers. Today, gold is at about $1,700 an ounce troy, so that makes the loose double eagles worth about $1,820 each, the eagles about $910, and the half eagles about $455 each. In the coin pile, I can identify 9 double eagles, 30 to 35 eagles, 25 to 30 half eagles, plus the Canadian gold pieces. That brings our total value of the 64 to 74 coins visible in the pile in the neighborhood of $56,000 to $63,000. Let's turn our attention to Scrapbook 158, in which Forrest published this amazing photograph. I'll come back to this again, but for now let's think only about the coins. First, we see lots of loose coins in the lower left quadrant of the picture underneath everything. And here is an Austrian gold florin. I assume a recent reissue with a melt value of $170, but we can't be sure. Moving counterclockwise, there are a few more loose coins, as well as slabs, protective containers for more valuable coins. Next, we notice this silver coin here, which is likely one of the 13th century Middle Eastern coins that Forrest mentioned in the Moby Dickens interview. The edge wear and this beaded pattern are prevalent in these. Forrest said coins plural, so let's assume 3 at a face value of $300 to $800 each. Next to it is an upright stack of gold coins in a plastic container. It looks like about 15 coins with one very small coin and a bezel on top, something like a 15th ounce Libertad for $115. The primary stack, they're about the size of quarters or just under that. They could be anything from 1/10 of an ounce on the low side or a 1/4 ounce French roosters on the high side. They look foreign, but it's impossible to say without a closer look. A similar container rests on its side, but it appears to have rings inside, maybe a few coins as well. Underneath the smaller frog is a roll of coins. In fact, there are 5. These are Sacagawea dollars. Glenna Goodacre designed the face of this coin, by the way. They don't fit the theme of valuable old gold. These are just filler for this trial run. You'll notice Forrest makes ample use of plastic storage containers for several of the objects. As we continue to move counterclockwise, we see one in particular at the top of the chest that's in its own protective case. This is a 1984 Los Angeles Olympiad-proof gold $10 commemorative. We can't see the mint mark, but they're all valued the same, worth about $820. Up here at the top of the chest is a Capital Plastics custom holder that says Gold Coins of Mexico. These containers often hold 6 or 7 coins, but we can't know what these are. These are old Pcgs Slabs. The coin on top is a Liberty Head, $20 in MS62. That's low-grade uncirculated. The date is between 1901 and 1906, based on the visible slab numbers, but we can see the 4 So this is a 1904, valued between $1820 and $1900. It looks like 10 of these slabs, possibly another 1 or 2 slabs way at the bottom. This white square makes me think so. And there are 2 more over here. We can't see their contents, but we can assume coins in the same ballpark as far as quality and value. With 14 slabbed coins of similar value, we're looking at $25,000 to $26,000 or $27,000. But this is conservative. It could be that Forrest splurged on a few of these, which would take our high-end estimate up to maybe $35,000. There could be a cylindrical case under the Middle Eastern coin. You can see the rings of stacked gold objects. There's another case here, although this lid makes me think it's gold nuggets or gold dust and not coins. And possibly under the Commemorative. Before leaving this image, let me remind everyone this is not the final version of the chest. Forrest removed the 2 watches, the large gems, the rolled coins, and the paper money. You can see the Grover Cleveland $1,000 bill out front. There are at least 3 containers of paper currency, all removed. But it gives us a peek at many specific items that remained and allows us to see Forrest's methods as he put the chest together. This picture was also released to various media. There's roughly the same number of coins here as in the pile picture, about 90 here, but with a much higher ratio of double eagles, 29 in this picture versus 9 in the pile photo. 15% are double eagles in the pile photo, and about 45% of the identifiable coins are double eagles in the chest photo. Put a pin in that, it's more important than you think. I'm assuming a lot of the same coins were used in both pictures. I'm mainly concerned with ratios right now, since we're going to need to extrapolate. Because, despite our investigation, we're nowhere close to the 265 number. We have about 90 loose coins plus the others in the chest. That's only 130 coins. But we have to get to 265 and keep our ratios so that it can still be said that our coins are mostly eagles and double eagles. I think the key is in those Sacagawea dollars that were stand-ins for something. If I'm right, it means Forrest didn't intend to fill the chest with more proof cases or slabbed coins. After all, they take up a lot of room. To get to 265, I think he adds 125 more eagles, double eagles, and half eagles. So the total of all types of these is 215, which gets us to 255, and that leaves room for a few miscellaneous coins. Here's where our ratios are important. If the ratios of all types of the eagle coins are in line with the pile photo, we're looking at a total of $185,000. But if the ratios are more like what we see in the chest picture, it's closer to $250,000 for just these 3 types of coins. Now we need to add in the other types based on our calculations. For these, I have a low estimate of about $33,000 and a high estimate of about $56,000. This brings all coinage on the low end to about $218 and on the high end at about $305. The next category is gold nuggets. Forrest says the chest contains placer nuggets from Alaska. 2 of them weigh more than a pound each. I think he's saying avoirdupois pounds. He says hundreds of smaller ones. There are several factors that are at play when you're talking about placer gold, that is, gold found in nature, formed naturally. On the one hand, it's not as pure. On the other hand, it's rare. Any value a gold nugget has beyond its strict melt value is going to vary by size, shape, purity, eye appeal, and provenance. Collectability for large nuggets is a wild card. A thing is worth what someone will pay for it. So the 2 large nuggets, at about 16 ounces troy each, 20 carat, just the melt value is about $22,576 per nugget on the low end. For the high end, a little over 3.5 times this at $80,000 each. It's really impossible, even with the photographs, to go much further with an evaluation. We can see other large nuggets, roughly half the size of the larger ones. We could make estimates for all of these, but we're still only looking at a fraction. There's also gold dust from the days of the 49 gold rush. We're better off taking the statements about the 20.2 troy pounds of gold in the chest, estimating how much of that is coinage to figure the remaining placer, and coming up with a range. I calculate between 9.5 and 12.5 troy pounds of gold coin. Let's split the difference and say 11. That leaves 11.2 for placer minus our two largest nuggets. That makes 102 troy ounces for all the other nuggets and gold dust. At 19 or 20 carat, we get a low-end melt value of about 144,000. But sold individually, I think we can safely double that number. Our low end for all placer gold is $189,152, and our high end estimate is $448,000. So far, our low end total for all coinage and placer gold, what Forrest has referred to when he says over 20 pounds of gold, is $407,817 on the low end and $750,000 on the high end. We have built-in confirmation for this because strictly our melt value puts us at almost precisely that low-end figure. If you've been frustrated by these wide-ranging estimates, the rest of my attempts to calculate value will drive you crazy, because now we're going to talk about jewelry and artifacts. If you were to hand this chest over to Christie's or Sotheby's, they would rely on a dozen experts with different areas of expertise. All we can do now is just make reasonable estimates based on the market. The next thing Forrest mentions are the pre-Columbian gold animal figures. Sometimes he calls them wakas. I think he's referring to the two frogs. This Decus miniature gold figure, about 1.5 inches tall, sold for $2,500. This is on the high end of what I've seen, but with the necklace, I think we're in the ballpark. I give it an estimate of $1,200 to $3,500. This large Decus gold frog pendant, 2.5 inches tall, sold for $6,000. The frog in the chest is simple in its design. Similar pre-Columbian pieces I've seen usually go for $2,500 to $7,500. The next item Forrest mentions are the ancient Chinese human faces carved from jade. He didn't say masks. I doubt they would fit in the chest if they were that large. And he doesn't say how many, so I'll just assume 2. Based on my research, I think these would sell as a set for $1,200 to $4,500. Next up is the 17th century Spanish gold ring with an emerald that was found at San Lazaro with a metal detector. Here's a ring, probably in line with what's in the chest, that went for $1,000. Here's another piece that I assume is more ornate than the ring in the chest. It sold for the equivalent of $5,865. But I've seen small pieces of jewelry like this, because of their fascinating history, go for twice this easily. Forrest has shown photographs of many items in the chest, but not this one. I assume it's not photogenic. I know some people will want to aim very high for this item, but I tend to think that put up for auction, it would fetch between $5,000 and $12,000. We know a great deal about the next item Forrest mentions, the antique gold dragon coat bracelet. It's pictured in the chest. Eric Sloane purchased it for his wife. Forrest acquired it between 1975 and 85. You can see a break here and possibly a hinge underneath, which creates a flex point for putting the bracelet on. Then you clasp here, under the dragon's head. This is a common design, a serpentine body around the wrist with a large clasp at the head. There are about 40 small rubies studding the dragon's scales in each of the 6 rows. 6 rows of these is 240 rubies, leaving 14 more decorating the dragon's head, I assume, along with emeralds and sapphires that we can barely make out. Many small diamonds are also incorporated into the design. The dragon motif is Asian, and Asian tourism was very popular for people of Eric and Mimi Sloane's generation. He could have acquired it on a trip east, or in New York City for that matter. There's almost no point in trying to track it down because what holds the most value in a piece like this is the story. An appraiser would want to examine all the stones, but I don't think a man of Sloane's means would have skimped. The bracelet is large. I'm estimating 3.5 inches in diameter, and similar pieces designed for a select clientele are very expensive. A jeweler told me that David Yurman would sell a signature piece like this as a one-of-a-kind for $35,000 to $55,000, and that Cartier would sell a similar bracelet for $55,000 to $80,000. An estimate of $45,000 to $75,000 seems reasonable as these things go. By the way, a couple of times Forrest said the chest contained rubies, sapphires, emeralds, and diamonds. When I hear him say this, it sounds very much like the way he describes this piece of jewelry, so I don't think we're supposed to expect a separate stash of loose gemstones. I think he's referring to this spectacular piece here. Next item is the Roe bracelet, and we have lots of backstory. Richard Wetherill excavated 22 turquoise beads in 1898, and a Navajo silversmith used these to make the bracelet in 1901. Wetherill sold it to Fred Harvey, and it was passed down in the Harvey family until it belonged to Byron Harvey III, from whom Forrest won it in a pool game in 1965. You'll see Fred Harvey's name linked to jewelry, Fred Harvey style or Fred Harvey era, but this bracelet is much more than that. Fred Harvey owned it, probably wore it. Here's Forrest looking stylish wearing it. With a fascinating 120-year tale attached to it, this single piece of jewelry could be put up at auction, and you could expect to bring $30,000 to $50,000. Next, Forrest mentions the 2,000-year-old Tyrona and Sinew Indian necklace with animal fetishes carved from quartz crystal, carnelian, jadeite, and other exotic stones, with a gold jaguar claw and gold frog somehow part of the design. I find a number of Tyrona necklaces that have yielded sums ranging from $500 to $8,000. I found one with 26 gold frogs that sold for $62.50. Another had gold and blue glass trade beads, sold for $7,750. At Sotheby's, this necklace brought in $17,500. I couldn't find anything that quite matched what Forrest describes, which could indicate that it's rare. His description is certainly unusual. I think Sotheby's could expect to garner anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000. A few more items were not mentioned in the book, but Forrest has described them since then. Wolfgang Pogzeba gave Forrest these 14 Mayan gold beads. They're loose beads. Looks like Forrest might have put them on a wire to keep them together. Forrest says they're 3,000 years old, which is astonishing. I would think they would be much younger than that and would price them at $1,000 to $2,000. If they really are 3,000 years old, I would price them at 10 times that. This necklace has a 700-year-old disc bead discovered at San Lazaro attached to a 2.1 troy-ounce gold nugget. I think this could fetch between $6,000 and $10,000. The chest contains 2 pre-Columbian gold mirrors. I find similar items listed for about $3,200, so I'll say between $2,000 and $5,000 each. There are nose rings inside the chest. Sadly, we don't have a picture of Forrest wearing them. That would increase their value. I was able to sniff out some other similar items at auction that went for about $700, so I'll put these in the same range. We know that the chest is unlocked, but the key is inside it. And we know that Forrest included a couple of hairs in case DNA testing is something a future finder wants to do. That's the most straightforward way to take a little of me is also inside the box. I've already mentioned there were several things that went into the chest but were later removed. There's one other item in this category, and that's the vehicle that Forrest originally chose for confirmation to know when the chest was found. Douglas Preston referred to a $100,000 IOU that was taken out. He says Forrest worked out a better way. However, I don't know whether that way is better financially for the finder. No one but Forrest knows precisely what's in the treasure chest. This picture shows one iteration at a time when he was tinkering around with the look and feel of it, taking pictures and dreaming of what it would be like to stumble upon this treasure. He took items out, and we know he put items in that he decided not to mention in the memoir until later. There could be others. But I've tried to perform a valuation for everything we know about inside the chest, with the exception of the autobiography. Let's talk about that. It's nearly impossible to put a value on this item. Single handwritten notes from famous people can go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then again, an early handwritten journal from John Steinbeck sold at auction recently for only $17,000. How famous the person is, how significant the writing, that can change, and then the estimate for an item like this shoots up or down. In our case, if it's handwritten, it's much more valuable. If it's unopened, it would garner media attention and sell for much more than if the seal has been broken. If the finder can come to a legal agreement with Forrest or his heirs as far as publication of this autobiography, then you could potentially be looking at book sales that would figure into the value of this item. A dollar figure is maddeningly elusive, and our range of estimated price at auction is wide enough to drive a truck through. I'd say on the low end, computer printed, opened, much of it material duplicated in the memoir, $2,000. On the high end, handwritten, unopened, catching the attention of the media and garnering a book deal, $200,000. And this raises an important issue. Our tallies look like this. Our very conservative low-end figure easily surpasses the $500,000 mark, and our high-end figure is over $1.3 million. But along the way, I haven't been figuring in the fact that each of these items is now attached to a famous treasure hunt. Only now, with the autobiography, have I demonstrated that the high outside range for each item could far surpass what we've calculated. My sense is that this is especially true for the less valuable items, sold individually. For example, if the chest contains a Libertad valued at $115, we can assume that many would compete for this item at auction, taking the sale price up to many times more than if it were just another gold coin. This one coin could sell for $4,000, which is 35 times its normal market value. If my hunch is right, all of the less valuable items sold separately easily have the potential of tripling or quadrupling in value, including the 500 or 600 individual gold coins and gold nuggets. All these items now have an exciting story, but the lower valued items bring in all interested parties. The higher value items, however, are only available to a select few. A bidding war can certainly take place for, say, the Tyrona necklace, but it's not going to fetch 35 times 30,000. But it could bring double. If we merely triple the items estimated to be worth $10,000 and less, and double the items valued at more than $10,000, we arrive at just shy of $3.5 million. I think this is a fair estimate if the items were sold through a reputable auctioneer. This would entail multiple individual sales and countless man-hours, and I'm not going to take into consideration the cut an auction house would take, which can be substantial. They can charge lot fees, a commission, photography fees, insurance, and of course there are taxes, but we don't want to get into that. There are many variables at this point. On the one hand, keeping a low profile could save a person money. But then again, you won't be able to advertise exactly what it is you're selling, use the media to create buzz and raise prices, and make even more money if you're so inclined. You can assume that every media outlet that has ever done a story on Forrest will want to do a follow-up with the finder. You can assume 2 or 3 large publications will want to negotiate exclusive rights to publish your pictures first. Same with video footage and television deals, first interview. Everyone will want something exclusive. Later, a book deal, a movie deal, reality TV offers. Going public will generate tremendous interest and raise the value of the treasure. But there will be a price for that. A person who decides to engage fully with the media might find they need a small staff on their payroll, a lawyer, an accountant with tax expertise, an agent, a publicist, a bodyguard, and you'll need to store it and take out a large insurance policy. This type of finder will have a significant outlay of cash before they sell a single item out of the chest. In the very least, the finder will need to seek legal counsel with a firm that has managed the liquidation of large estates and understands tax law. Perhaps separate legal counsel from a firm that can address the questions that revolve around property rights, so-called abandoned property, various land management agencies and their claims, not to mention the IRS. Like Forrest said, if you find the chest, you've opened Pandora's box. He's also advised hiding it for 30 days and doing nothing. You have a lot to think about. But, in my estimation, you'll be $3.5 million richer.